Today, I'll be speaking with Kenny Goldman, the co-founder at Kicksaw and founder and host of Sales TO, one of the largest recurring sales meetups in North America. Kenny is not only an amazing community catalyst, he also has the unique perspective of having landed all three of his sales jobs via Twitter. You're really going to enjoy this conversation.
Welcome to Seller's Journey, the podcast where we speak to great sales reps and leaders and share their real stories from start to sales success.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joseph Fung, and today we're chatting with Kenny Goldman. Kenny, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's a beautiful morning, and I'm looking forward to being on the podcast today.
Likewise, you have such a fun journey, and I know we've chatted so many times at Sales TO. I'm so glad to get the chance to dig into details. Thank you for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So we started off co-founder at Kicksaw. I know you've worked with a ton of companies that are absolutely incredible, but maybe you could start off by helping our audience. What does Kicksaw do? What's the elevator pitch?
Sure. It's super simple. We're fractional sales or revenue ops. So we come into companies, help them either at, depending on the stage they're at, stand up and build the fundamental aspects of their sales and revenue ops functions, or go into an existing teams and help augment and elevate their existing processes and tech stack to support the continued scale or growth of that organization.
That sounds like you've got some high stakes responsibilities there. How do you balance that with your work of hosting and running Sales TO?
Yeah, the good news is you surround yourself with great people, and a lot of the times the work itself doesn't necessarily fall on you. So, been fortunate to work with the team over at TechTO, which is another meetup, and they've been growing tremendously here in Toronto, and partnered with them 4 years ago to help oversee a lot of the background aspects of Sales TO, things like volunteers, venues, ordering food, some of the sponsorship conversations, volunteers, and other administrative aspects. And that's given me the ability to focus solely on speakers and content, the things that I enjoy the most.
Now, I want to get back to this topic of the speakers and the ecosystem, because I think there's some really good subject matter to dig into. But we do try to focus on people's stories. So maybe we can rewind, back to the earlier days in your career. Could you start off? Where'd you go to school? And maybe you could start off by sharing a little bit around how you landed your first job, because your first role at Vidyard there is such an interesting story. So maybe you can help us out with that.
Sure, yeah. So I went to school at Wilfrid Laurier University out in Waterloo, Kitchener. Mm-hmm. But before my first job at Vidyard, I actually started working when I was a teenager at a telemarketing gig. So I was making, your hundreds of calls a day, trying to sell people windows and doors when I was as young as 13 years old. Is that legal? I don't know, but that helped me develop some thick skin because 99.99% of the time you're getting rejected. And so you kind of get used to rejection. I think that was my first entrance really into sales, trying to convince someone over the phone to have someone that they don't know visit their house to inspect their windows and doors. Not easy to do, especially someone that is just past puberty and probably doesn't sound much like an adult.
So how did that go? How'd you do in that role?
It more than anything, I think I developed responsibility at such a young age. You have a shift. You start at 6 p.m. You work till 9:30 p.m. On weekends and weekdays. And so, weekdays only, and then weekends you'd work from like a 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. type shift. And very few 13, 14, 15-year-olds are doing that. And I did it with a couple friends, so it made life a little bit easier, and actually found different jobs. I applied to newer ones, more modern ones, more sophisticated ones that had better tools and better management. And it was kind of my first foray into having a responsibility, having a job, earning some sort of income, depositing that and managing my own money. And so I developed a lot of skills early on that way. And it felt good to be in control of the money I made, right? And being able to spend money at such a young age on things that I wanted, rather than have to focus on money from my parents or, birthday money or things like that.
Nice.
So that
Nice.
was good. And then from there, I actually moved into a retail gig at a company called Running Room. If anyone's familiar with Running Room, they sell running apparel and food, everything devoted to um, athletes, primarily runners and walkers. And managed, the opening of a store, and was just very active at that store. And once again, that gave me experience selling, being in front of people, talking to them, educating them, and just developing that skill set of how to hold a conversation, how to engage people, how to present different things like new apparel, new shoes, how to explain things in a way that appealed to their interests. And then finally went to Laurier for business bachelor administration, concentrated in entrepreneurship. And the way I got into Vidyard was I was always eager to just find a job, get a job. I always felt that like maintaining a job was, I guess, the best practice or conventional. At the
Mhm.
time, it wasn't, because very few people I knew had a job in the third year of university. But I found on Twitter that Vidyard was hosting a recruiting event. Unbeknownst to me, it was solely an engineering recruiting event. Like, you walk in the door and you sit down to the right, and there's a coding test, and it was primarily engineers there, and they're just focused on engineers, right? As a lot of earlier stage companies are. But I walked in there being the only salesperson slash marketing person there. Walked right up to Mike Litt. I said, "Hey, Mike, you don't know me, but I found this event. Here's my resume. I'm interested in working for you." And I think he was so shocked. I don't think he knew what to say at that time, because what's a sales guy from third year of university, can't even work full time, doing it at an engineering event? So he introduced me to one of their only sales roles at the company, Dan Wardle, um, to chat with me. And I almost think out of out of um, guilt, they brought me in for an interview the following
So
week.
to make sure that I get this right, you go to the engineering recruiting event, walk up to the CEO, tell him you want to work for him, and they feel guilty enough that they give you an interview. Is this right?
Pretty much, it was naive, naivety at its best, right? Not knowing what was going on, but just doing it, being a go getter. And so it landed me that interview, and they initially said no. Mike's like, I have no use for a kid who's in school who can't even work here full time. You'd be part time. You don't even know what days you're available, because you don't know what classes you're in next semester. So how do you expect me to hire you? So I finally said, I'll do it for free. So no laptop. I brought my own Sony laptop, clunky Sony laptop, and I came to the office almost as much as I could, skipped classes, and I was trying to be there full time every single day,
Wow.
um, for for 3 months, until finally I was actually doing work. I was converting leads. I was reaching out to inbounds as quick as I could in class, sending someone an email as I saw they came through Salesforce. That they appreciated my hustle. They liked the fact that I wanted to work hard and had a work ethic, and offered me the co-op role for that summer. And so then I became actually full time, paid in a role at Vidyard after that 3 month free stint.
Okay, so a couple of questions. First off, you mentioned how you came across this meetup. Is that where Twitter kind of falls into the story of landing your role at Vidyard?
Exactly. Yeah. I had no idea who Vidyard was until I saw them being active on Twitter, and Mike was active on Twitter. And so that was the introduction to Vidyard at the time for me.
Okay, so now I can get a better idea of this image. You've got this kind of university student, learns about the startup, on Twitter, attends the event, convinces them to bring them on. Uh, what did they have you do? I'm trying to imagine myself in the role of having somebody with so much moxie and drive and enthusiasm. And I confess, I don't know what I would have them do in that role. What did they have you working on?
Yeah. I think at that time for Vidyard, it was just prospect as much as you possibly can.
Wow.
And they had lists upon lists of going to different events, and people that they haven't touched base with, or people that have signed up a while back that went cold. So they had thousands of people in lists in Salesforce who were just not even being nurtured, but they were just sitting there cold. So just started going through that list and started sending emails, and touching 100 people a day. Um, And, it was a good opportunity for me to learn how to send emails. Sometimes people would say, sure, give me a call. And I'd have to call them and pitch the product and pitch, who Vidyard was. And so it was a really good introduction into learning everything I possibly could about the company, about what they do, about why Vidyard was unique in the market, who the competitors were. And none of that was provided to me. It was very much ask a million questions or do a ton of research online to find those answers, because everyone was wearing multiple hats at the time. No,
Mhm.
to put this in perspective, I was theirs. If had I been a full-time employee, that would have been employee number like 14.
Wow,
So
that was early.
very, very small team. Yeah, it was, since you're familiar with them, it was when they moved out of the greenhouse into their first kind of office, literally a month after they moved from the greenhouse.
That's an exciting time. That's a good point in their history.
Very fun, yeah, young team. It was exciting to be around them at that time.
Now, it's clear at that time, not beyond just the fun, you learned a lot. And this is a great story of a first role while you're at school. You had graduated before you landed your role at Hired, though, right?
Correct. Yeah. So what I did was worked for free for a few months, did my co-op in the summer, and then what I presented to Michael, the CEO, was not exactly at the end, but near the end of my co-op stint. What I had done is I'd actually moved all my courses to either online courses
Mm-hmm.
or evening courses,
Hmm.
6 or 7 to 9 p.m. or 9:30. And I pitched the concept of a full-time role with Mike before then in my co-op, and kind of presented my schedule and said, I can already commit to a full-time gig. And I'd been doing well in my co-op, so we went forward. So my fourth year of university, I was working full-time at Vidyard and
Mhm.
full-time at school, with the exception of, I think Fridays was the only day I had to have a class at like 2 to 5. So I'd leave half day on Friday, and then pick up the slack over the weekend, responding to emails or prepping emails for Monday. Otherwise, I was there full-time, Monday to Thursday, 7:30 till 5, 6 p.m., as late as I could possibly stay before I had to go to class.
That's a crazy workload. I'm impressed. That's a ton of work.
And it was ironically my best year. I think being so busy required me to be proactive, prepare, not waste any moment I had. So it was actually my best performing year in school, and I had an amazing time and learned a lot at Vidyard.
I can imagine how the time management skills that you pick up as a sales rep helped out in the schooling as well. So yeah, I can imagine that. There you go.
Yeah,
Uh,
so I was there just to finish up my time at Vidyard. I was there. I graduated, and then I stuck around Vidyard for I think another 8 or 10 months, and just learned a lot and met a lot of amazing people before I took the leap to Hired.
Now, you mentioned how you landed your role at Hired as well as at Helpful via Twitter. Maybe you could share those stories. How did those opportunities come to be?
Yeah, I actually landed a ton of opportunities through Twitter. A very interesting one that not many people know is there's a guy by the name of Heaton Shaw. He was one of the co-founders of Kissmetrics. He's pretty influential in San Francisco, and just product marketer, growth marketer, and he just writes a lot of great content. And I was more of a lurker on Twitter than anything. But one time he posted the need for some help doing a research project, and I just happened to respond to him faster than anyone on Twitter that day. And he brought me in, and we did a post on, does Slack have product market fit, back in 2015,
Oh,
when
wow.
Slack was really just trying. And I got to develop a really good relationship with Heaton and a few other people. And you can find it online. Just go to Heaton Shaw Slack Research Project. And basically, we distributed a Typeform survey, or was it SurveyMonkey, to 900 people through his connections and what very little connections I had around people's thoughts and product market fit of Slack. And then I compiled all the research, presented all the responses to him, and then he wrote it up with a content marketer. So that was an amazing opportunity for me to see how a lot of that stuff is done and work with someone who's brilliant. And that was solely through Twitter. And he's been invaluable resource and friend as I've kind of built my career and presented ideas to him and picked his brain. And anytime I visit San Francisco, he's always a good person to connect with. But through Hired, I noticed that one of the early employees, a guy by the name of Andre Charoux, who
Mhm.
comes from Canada initially, was looking to open the Toronto office and the Canadian presence of Hired. And so he was active on Twitter, posting the roles. And once again, naively, the role was for like a GM. And I'm like, I'm no GM, but I know the Toronto market pretty well, and I know people, and I know startups, and I think I can add value to this company. And so I applied, and I think once again he liked my tenacity, and reached out to him, email, Twitter, any possible way I can get in touch with him. I did so, and finally got a response, and went through the actual formal interview process, and landed the first sales role that they hired in Canada.
That's fantastic. So, yeah, you've worked some, dare I say, kind of titans in the tech and the sales tech space. I mean, Heaton, Michael, Andre, all remarkable people, and you get the chance to run this incredible meetup event. So maybe we can kind of step a little bit from just the individual roles for a brief moment and touch briefly on the meetup itself. You also spoke about bringing in speakers from out of town. Can you share a bit about why that's so important, and also just how do you make it happen?
Yeah. So Sales TO for me was at the time an opportunity for me to develop my public speaking skills. Very few people cared about what Kenny Goldman had to say, and even today, right? It's what are a lot of the practitioners doing out there. But at the time, I had no platform of which to speak from, and I felt that I lacked that skill. And so I figured if I could bring together a smart, reputable panel of speakers in the sales community, which I know, then I'll be able to be on stage beside them and have some format to present or talk to people. And so that was kind of the impetus for Sales TO. There was, of course, a lack of a sales community and a presence in Toronto. But more than that, for me, it was just an opportunity to build my network, meet some people, have an excuse to reach out to some awesome sales leaders, and be in front of a audience for which I can practice speaking. So that was the initial thought process around Sales TO. And initially, it was not about finding people abroad. It was around, great, let's connect the local talent. Let's expose some amazing thought leaders and influencers, and let's present new ideas and concepts to people who are up and coming in their careers or who've been in sales for a while, who haven't been privy to some of the more modern principles and concepts and technologies and whatnot.
So that pattern of continuous development, it's been so prevalent in your journey there, from your role at Vidyard to, you said, launching Sales TO, to learn and build your own public speaking skills. If we were to reflect that back to a broader audience, people that are trying to build their own careers now, what would be some of the areas that you commonly see deficiencies? Or another way to put it, you speak to so many sales reps. Where are the patterns of gaps? So where could people differentiate themselves in today's market?
Yeah, I think the resources are all available. I think it just requires the willpower and desire to do it. Mm-hmm. There's so many books out there that talk about a lot of amazing concepts that help people in sales. It has nothing to do with sales itself, but it has to do with talking to people, presenting ideas, sharing thoughts, helping people open up. And these all relate to sales, but they're not directly or only a sales concept or principle. Like Influence by Robert Cialdini is a great book that talks about, those types of concepts in psychology and getting people to talk. The Mom Test is another great example of a book where it teaches you how to present ideas in an unbiased manner, right? You love your product, you love what you sell, but not everyone does. Most people don't, actually. So how are you able to communicate, the value prop and concepts of what you're selling in a way that doesn't sound like you're pitching? And then, of course, there's all the amazing sales books out there too that I've read. But I think, number one is there's a ton of resources out there that can help people improve their abilities and their grammar and concepts to use that I think many people don't take advantage of.
I love how you start off by mentioning how these aren't necessarily sales specific skills. They're about other areas, but also in another conversation, we actually spoke about the importance of sales skills like that background, the mindset in founding and running a company.
Mhm.
So for those people in a sales role who are looking at tech companies, maybe you can expand on that a little bit. Why is it so critical to the success of a company?
Yeah, I think a lot of the success of the company is getting out in front of the right people, and
Mm-hmm.
how you get out in front of the right people and how you get them to respond and how you get them to engage in a conversation is going to open up a lot of doors for you to learn about what you're building, about your market, about what people think about what you're building. And so, first and foremost is you're solving a problem at a tech company. Oftentimes, problem you've experienced, a problem someone else has experienced, and you often have a ton of different hypotheses around how people react, how people act, how people experience those pain points, how valuable are solving those pain points. And the only way to really test them is talk to people early on, right? It takes time to build a product, it takes time to get something out in the market. I think it's so important that you develop the skills needed to be able to talk to people outside of your immediate circle, your network, how to find people, how to prospect, how to reach out, how to communicate your thoughts, how to incite some sort of curiosity out of someone and be able to relate and resonate with some of their pains and their problems. And those skills, I think, help propel and accelerate the early phases of a company to get to a point where you can get early users or early customers and actually use that as leverage to, hit critical mass inside of a market. Obviously, I'm oversimplifying things and skipping things, but I think, product will get you pretty far, certainly. But I think at the end of the day, you have to back that up with discussions and research and in conversations and relationships.
I love the thought, and I love how deliberate you are about not just your own improvement, but the way you guide people to that ongoing sense of improvement. If we could cast our eyes forward for a little bit, what are you working on next? If I dare ask, what area of your own work or your own business are you working on improving next?
Yeah, so I recently read a book. Oh, it's escaping my mind. The negotiation book by Chris Voss. That was it. He was a former Never Split the Difference,
Mm-hmm.
former negotiator. And a lot of what I'm working on is learning how to present or sell services. My business is a services business. We don't have a product. We don't have the same scalability as a product. And there's this negative connotation that people have with services business or with consultants in general. And understanding how to address a lot of those objections or those negative initial impressions or perceptions of services or consultants is something that I'm focused on. Furthermore, I'm also focused on another aspect of sales, which is less selling to new users or
Mm-hmm.
new customers and focusing on existing customers. A lot of our business as consultants is the ongoing relationship we have with people. And how do you maintain that relationship? How do you strengthen that relationship? And how do you build that rapport as quick as possible? Because the more you develop a relationship, we all know that people buy through emotions, the better likelihood that they'll want us to continue to support them, work with them, and continue to add that value. But if they don't like us as humans, as partners, then the likelihood that they'll continue to speak about their problems or where we can help out, we won't get those opportunities as much.
Kenny, this is remarkable. I know that I promised we wouldn't take up too much time. You okay if we go through a couple of really quick questions, the rapid fires, before we wrap up?
Let's do it.
Okay, so first off, just some contact information. You are incredibly well connected, and you've got some great thoughts. If people want to reach out to you or to Kicksaw, where would they find you?
Twitter, LinkedIn, very active on either of those. Easy to find, Kenny Goldman. So it's probably a good starting place to get in touch with me.
Awesome. And if people are interested in learning more about Sales TO and coming out to these incredible meetups, where would they learn more?
SalesTO.org has all the information you need there. I'll, of course, always post it on Twitter and LinkedIn as well. So many of my posts are related to upcoming events or speakers, things of that nature. So you can easily find any information on the site or through my social handles.
And I'll make sure we grab those links and put them into the description of this episode. So if you're listening in, check out the description of the episode to find those links that Kenny shared. A couple of rapid fire questions, and then we can let you get back to all the fantastic work. Tools. Everybody's always curious about tools. What is your favorite sales tool?
It's a good question. We're not your typical SaaS company where we're inundated with tools and using every single tool. We're actually trying to limit the amount of tools we use until we validate and use the right tools. But we are using a few tools. And recently I've been spending a lot more time in Gong, only because I can't be on every single call that we have with customers. And I think it's so valuable to give feedback and to hear how other team members are performing. And so I use that is any opportunity I get to listen rather than a podcast or music. I'll try to listen to some Gong calls to see where there's opportunities for us to improve. And everything is always easier in hindsight, right? So as I'm listening to things, I can pause and take time to take some notes or re-listen to certain portions of the call. But right now I'm spending a lot of my time inside of Gong being able to, I think it's like nuggets of gold is the way I'm phrasing it, in being able to identify areas that, one person may have struggled in, or a complicated question that now I can present to the whole team and everyone knows how to address it and feel comfortable with that type of question.
That's fantastic. That's such a great recommendation, especially given all of the attention to continuous improvement. So thank you.
Of course.
Outside of work, though, I know that we're not going to the theaters very much while everyone's working from home. But what's your favorite movie overall?
Yeah, I think my favorite movie is I've always had an affinity towards Forrest Gump. Love the movie. I love Tom Hanks. I think many people love the movie. It's a fantastic movie, but always just love that movie. And anytime I see it on TV, I can happily rewatch it. At this point, I've seen it many more times than I can count, but it's a fantastic movie.
And then casting your mind back to your youngest years, when you were a kid, what did you want to grow up to be?
I don't think I had any crazy aspirations. To be honest, I've always been very interested in psychology and helping people think through problems and helping understand their problems. So that's always very much appealed to me. Something that I've always wanted, an area of interest I've wanted to get into. So psychology has been something that probably as a kid, at the time I didn't know what psychology was, but working with people and helping people think through some problems or areas of uncertainty, and just communicating with people. I love any interaction I get with an individual or someone that I know or don't know. Always energized, always feeling good at the end of it. So definitely has to do with people.
What a delightful answer. Kenny, thank you so much for such a great conversation. This has been a blast.
Thank you, Joseph. I've loved it as well. Always having a great conversation with you, and love what you and the team are doing at Uvaro. So appreciate your support to the Toronto sales community and what you've got going on here.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to getting a chance to continue this conversation in person once the events are again back in person. But in the meantime, I hope you're enjoying the summer weather, staying safe, and hoping you're having a great time.
Definitely. I'm trying to, yes, as much as I can soak up the sun.
Great stuff. We'll chat soon, Kenny.
Take care. Thanks, Joseph.